Okay, I think live. Can we see everyone right now? Let me see here. If I am live right now, everybody, I'm gonna. Oh, here we go. All right. So we are live here. Okay, I think live. Can we see everyone right now? Okay. We are live, and I'm here with Shreekala, and what we're here to talk about is the new exciting course that she has now on the University of Astrology. I am so very proud of you, Shree, because this is amazing. And like I sent out in my newsletter yesterday, I just want everyone to know that the most important thing in life is just to empower other people. So what I've always said is true power is when you empower others. And as I said that, it feels so good. It's like, when you've taught somebody and you see their success, like your children, there is nothing in the world more gratifying than that. And Shree, you have worked so hard, and I've known you for so long. You really are the hardest working person I know. I think you're like me because we have a passion for astrology. We absolutely love it, and we know how it transforms and changes people's lives. This is what is the most divine science of all, because it really teaches us to know ourselves. And there's nothing more important than understanding ourselves. When you do, then you know everything to the universe, because really the world is a reflection of ourselves. So when you really get down to the truth of astrology, then you have this information. And I'm just so excited. Let me get back to everything that I wanted to talk about. Well, the University of Vedic Astrology, as conceived of it, what about 6-7 years ago, thought, what if I have a school where I empower all the students to be the teachers, to be the instructors for the university? And I devised a course of 6 hours where everyone learns all the bases and the rules for how I make all of my predictions and how I get a chart. And once you finished with the 6 semesters, then I want to empower my graduates to be professional astrologers, not only doing reads for people, but I want to teach. I want to write. I want them to be everything that they can.
I think there's a really big echo on your voice, and a lot of people are noticing that.
Really? So I don't know how to fix that. Let me see. No. Let me see.
I think maybe somebody's saying there's probably 2 speakers on.
Okay, so let me see. I only have maybe I'll get, no, if I mute myself, you won't hear me. So what could it be?
Let me see.
Okay, guys, hold on. This is, and Mercury not even retrograde. That. So is there anything that you see, Shree, on your end? You know what? Maybe okay. I think I know could be a problem.
I'm looking. I don't see. Let me see. I don't hear you at all now. Are you on mute?
Okay.
Are you on mute, Joni?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Am I still echoing?
A little bit, but.
Here's what I think is going on. I'm scared if I do something here, I'm gonna get completely out.
And you turned the YouTube volume down, right? Lots of people are suggesting that.
Okay. Let me see. Can you hear me? Is it echoing?
So yeah, once it did.
Let me see here.
No.
Yeah. No, it's not that.
I think it's fine now. Can you talk? Let's see.
Is it okay now?
It's a little better. Yeah.
A little bit.
You did something in between where it was okay.
When you talk, does it do it?
No, I think my voice is fine, right?
Is it just that's acting that way?
Yeah, I think it's just, I mean, only you talk till now. So let's go on and see what happens. I think it's okay.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to tell everybody about your accomplishments because, this has been, I have to say this, put together this university as I have it is one of the greatest accomplishments in the world. I have to say my first greatest accomplishment in the world is raising 3 sons. And the greatest accomplishment is the university because I'm here to do and to empower my students to all be professional astrologers, create a community of learning and support. Most of all, this is an easy science to learn, and that we'll all learn from each other. Because as you know, I empowered you and coerced you to write your own book. And I always all of my teachers to find their niche, what they're so interested in, because that's when you feel passion, when you're really, really interested in something. So you really love Jaimini Astrology. And since then, I said, the best way to learn something is to teach it and to write a book about it. And you did homework, you did your research over all these years, and you created this incredible learn tool for everyone that wants to learn Jaimini Astrology. Now, one thing I really want to know about the university is these classes that the tutors and the graduates are putting together. These classes are standalone. So in other words, you have to take the entire university in order to take this Jaimini class. So with that, I want Shree to open up, tell everybody what this course is about, and talk a little bit about Jaimini because it is so fascinating. So be my guest now, Shree, tell everybody about it.
Sure, yes. So thank you, Joni, once again. You always introduce me to, you say all these wonderful things and, I'm not even sure if I'm worthy of it, but I have to say a lot of what I've done, even the Jaimini book, the fundamentals of Jaimini astrology, and this particular course, it's all, of course, you've encouraged me to do all of this. And because when I first started learning astrology, all I knew was the Shree system. That was back in 2009. And the Jaimini system, we started, the first time I heard about it was in the university, right? Because that's one of our fifth semester topics. And, when you said, Shree, why don't you do some more research on this? That was like a few years ago. I thought, yeah, let me go and see what this is all about. And what I realized is that this system of astrology, and I don't know how many of you out there have some, understanding or, some kind of introduction on Jaimini astrology. But those of you who do, you probably already know that this is a very simple, beautiful, and accurate system of astrology, I have to say, because when I first started learning it, I wasn't that, Joni, were you saying something?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, I thought you were saying something. So when I first started learning the Jaimini system, it was a little difficult for me to understand. And that's one of the reasons why I wrote the book, The Fundamentals of Jaimini Astrology, because I thought we needed a more simplistic way to understand this particular system, right? And the whole idea behind putting together this course is to give you the understanding at a basic and a fundamentals level, because when the foundation is strong, you can build on it, right? And a lot of what I'll talk about in this course is, first of all, what is Jaimini system of astrology? It originated in the southern part of India. It's actually, even today, it's really prevalent in the south part of India, specifically in a state called Andhra Pradesh in India. And this particular system was devised by sage Jaimini, who was a renowned sage, lived in the same time frame as sage Vedavyasa and sage Parashara. For those of you who know, sage Vedavyasa was the son of sage Parashara. He's one of the most renowned sages in India. And his student was sage Jaimini. So they all lived in the same time frame. And I think that's one of the reasons why the main crux of the Jaimini system, like the way the chart looks and the signs and all that, is the same. But a lot of difference comes in when you try to make predictions, because the aspects are different. The Karakas are not fixed Karakas like you have in Parashara system. These are Chara Karakas, the Atma Karaka, the Amatya Karaka, and so on. The Chara Dashas, we don't have planetary dashas, we go by sign-based dashas, right? And special Lagnas, that's a very important topic as well, because we talk about the Karakamsha Lagna, which is basically the soul of the Jaimini system. And then you have the Arudha Lagna. And I talk about all of that in the course. And I had to do a lot of research to understand what these concepts are. It wasn't something that was easy to comprehend, but a lot of research. I had to go into the Jaimini sutras to understand what they are. So when you talk about the Jaimini system, the whole system is based on something called the Upadesha Sutras. And the Jaimini Upadesha Sutras, just like you have the Brihad Parashara Hora Shastra, which is the BPHS for Parashara system, you have the Jaimini Upadesha Sutras. And these sutras, now, some of you may think, what is the difference between a sutra and a shloka? A sutra is really small. It's the biggest advantage of a sutra is its compactness, its brevity, right? So in a small number of words or syllables, you are conveying the most amount of knowledge. That's the idea behind a sutra. And then shlokas are very descriptive. They tell you a lot of information, but again, there's a lot of words to it, right? They are basically little rhymes or paragraphs. So Jaimini sutras are basically, most of them are sutras, and then there are some shlokas also in the Upadesha sutras. But one of the main topics that I talk about in this course is something called the Katapayadi system. And I know some of you probably already know about it, but the Katapayadi system is an ancient cipher-like system that was, it was built or created in India by ancient sages. So what it does is it's a way to assign letters to numbers for easy recall. So you have these sounds or kind of syllables that you take, you assign them to numbers, and then you kind of use a small calculation to get a particular number out of that. So instead of remembering a bunch of numbers, you remember a small little verse, which is easier to remember, right? It's music. You take that, and then once you decode it, you get your actual numbers or whatever that particular sutra is trying to convey. So I have like a whole lesson. The first lesson I'll be talking about the Katapayadi system. How do you use it to decode the sutras? Because one of the things I want to empower the students to do is, yes, I did do some research. I'm coming to you with some information, but I want you also to be empowered to go and look at these sutras if you want to, right? Because if you don't want to, we have modern software, which is doing all the calculations for us. It tells you the Argalas, and, the astrology software does all the calculation. But if you want to, I want to be able to empower you to do that. if you want to go and decode the sutras, and that's one of the main things I'll talk about in the first lesson, the Katapayadi system. Because if you just use plain Sanskrit to decode these sutras, you may not get all the information that's encoded in it. Because remember, these are like really small pieces of like little snippets that has a lot of information encoded in it. So you have to apply all these concepts. But Katapayadi system is one of the most important tools that you need to understand the Jaimini Upadesha Sutras. Once you use that and once you understand it, you know what each of those sutras are alluding to, and then you start using that in your practice or as an astrologer. So, like I said, we'll talk about that in the lesson. And one of the other main topics, which I know, Joni, you talk about it a lot too, is the Argalas.
Mm-hmm.
And I know, Joni, that's something that you and I have talked about a lot. So the Argalas are also something that, that made Jaimini system of astrology very interesting for me. Now, remember, Argalas are not specific to Jaimini. They are also mentioned in the Parashara Hora Shastra, but the Jaimini system, we use the Argalas a lot more. Now, just to explain to you in a very simplistic way, you take a sign or a house in the chart and you say, okay, this house has exalted Jupiter, right? And then you say, oh, it has exalted Jupiter, so that means I'm going to get a lot of benefit in this house. Now, the Argala brings us another layer on top of that, saying, will this house or the sign or the planet be coming into fruition in this lifetime or not? Is it going to be weak? Is it going to be strong? So what I'm trying to say is, just because you have an exalted Jupiter in that house or in the sign, it may not come into fruition in this lifetime. The Argala brings in a different layer saying, now let's look at the strength of this house. Let's see if this is going to become a reality, right? So, for example, for those of you who are Indians, the current situation with COVID going on in India, one of the most popular, very famous Indian actor, Amitabh Bachchan, has been hospitalized with COVID a couple of days ago. And that's, it's in the news everywhere in India. And, he's not only famous in India, everywhere around the world, he's known for, he's acted in so many movies, got so many awards, and, he's very popular. And if you look at his chart, and I will be looking at all that in the lesson as well, but if you look at his chart, you'll see he has, an exalted Jupiter in the 6th house. But over his lifetime, he's had a lot of health problems. And one of the reasons, when you see an exalted Jupiter in 6th house, most of the time we say, and it is a friend to his chart too, just to let you know. Most of the time we'll say, you probably have, you're probably lucky in matters of health, or, you have good health. But if you look at the Argala to that house, it's very weak. The Argala that's forming to the house is getting obstructed. That's what we say in Jaimini system, so that's one of the examples I can bring to you, because, and we talk about this very extensively. This is one of the, there's a whole lesson that's dedicated to Argalas in the course. We'll talk about how do you assess the strength of a house? How will you see if a house is going to, or a sign or a planet in that sign, for example, is going to give you its effects or benefits in this lifetime? And that's one of the main things that, that drew me to this system of astrology, because that's something I could not explain using other systems of astrology. That additional layer that comes on top saying, is this going to happen in this lifetime? Is this particular planet going to give me its benefit? And you will be really surprised to see, and actually it will be eye-opening for a lot of you, because it was for me, right? Because this is something I couldn't explain with traditional concepts, and with Argalas it's very easy to understand. And even when you talk about Raja Yogas in Jaimini, lots of Raja Yogas using the Karakas, even if you talk about the like exaltation of planets or Mula Trikona, whatever that is, you will see that it will come into fruition only if the Argala is not obstructed, or else it'll be weak. It's like the energy of that house is not flowing through it, it's getting blocked. And that is a very, very important concept of Jaimini that I want to talk about. And I wanted to touch on that because I know Joni talks about it a lot too. Um, so that's one of the things. And another thing that I wanted to kind of touch on that I'm talking about in this course is, I don't know if anybody else has ever done this before, but I dedicated a whole lesson in the Gemini semester to spirituality. And a lot of the topics that I talk about in here are, I had to do a lot of research to get to it, because how do you see spirituality or spiritual tendencies in a birth chart? And Joni, you may be aware of the Sannyasa Yoga and Parashara system. We talk about that a lot. The Moksha planet, Ketu. We talk about the 12th house and all that. But in the Jaimini system, there are certain techniques to assess spirituality. We look at the Atma Karaka. We look at the Karakamsha Lagna having any connections to the 12th house or the 12th sign. We look at Ketu having an aspect to either the Atma Karaka or the Karakamsha Lagna. So all of these can cause a person to kind of take the path of renunciation and say, I want to focus on these higher truths than on the material life, right? So that's the side of spirituality that they choose because of these certain aspects that are there in their chart, which make them take that path. So I talk about that extensively in the last lesson in the semester, because, we look at all the charts of Mother Teresa and the Pope, and we talk about Paramahansa Yogananda. His chart has a lot of Jaimini aspects, which have, spiritual tendencies. And then, when you talk about spirituality, it's a very broad term, right? Spirituality can be anything. It can be a person completely renouncing the material world and going down the path of spirituality. That's one thing. Another form of spirituality is where you become a teacher, a spiritual teacher. You've learned something about the spiritual ways, and you want to teach people about it in your lifetime. And that's a different aspect in Jaimini system that we look for that. That's ninth house connections with Ketu and the Karakamsha Lagna. And I discussed that in detail with Swami Vivekananda's chart, because he was a spiritual teacher, and Ramakrishna Paramahansa. And of course, one of the other charts that I use is, like I said, Mother Teresa, who took the path of renunciation. So all of this is what the course brings to you, a lot of concepts, and the concepts explained in a very simplistic fashion with charts to kind of, give that example, because it's important to look at charts to kind of understand what the concept is, right? We always look at charts. So that's in a nutshell, Joni, that's what the course had. And I wanted to give some examples so, people kind of get an understanding as to what it has.
Yeah. And am I still echoing bad?
No.
Oh, good. I don't know why I did and why I'm not now. Fantastic. So I love this because I use Jaimini Astrology in all my readings. I just don't,
Yeah, you started echoing again, Joni, a little bit. I think it's when you start talking.
You know what I think it is? I think I opened up twice, and I'm scared to click off of one because then I might lose the whole. I might lose we'd be disconnected completely. So I apologize everyone for this, but I'll let you do most of the talking is what I'll do. But I love the Karakas, the Jaimini Karakas, and how they're different from Parashara Karakas, such as, you mentioned the Atma Karaka as being who we are, our spirit, our soul, spirit, and it deals much with our sexuality. And one thing that I think I learned from this is when you have a Macha Karaka aspecting the Atma Karaka, just how powerful that is. That never fails in a chart reading. So I definitely use both systems. It's about kind of like having a backup.
Yes.
You know what I mean? But yeah, I don't want to do too much of the talking since something's not right with my computer today. I apologize. But Shree, tell everybody about, maybe answer some of the questions about your class, because some people are saying, can I take this class if I don't know any or Vedic astrology?
Yes. So yes, and I'll explain that. Of course, you can take it even if you don't have an initial understanding of Vedic astrology, because the way this course is structured is from the basics, right? When we talk about the first lesson, where we'll talk about the introduction, we will go into the chart structure, the signs, the planets, and then we'll talk about the Jaimini concept surrounding that, as in the aspects. The aspects are different in Jaimini too. Yes. But like just to answer that question, we do start from the basics. The reason I structured the course that way is because I thought, even if you don't know today, like what the Parashara system is saying, a lot of the Parashara system and the Jaimini system goes hand in hand. So say you start learning astrology and you take up the Jaimini system and you say, this is what I'm going to focus on, and you learn it, you can still later on incorporate the Parashara concepts to it, because in a way you can make predictions using both, right? When you're working as an astrologer. But the course itself, the fundamentals of Jaimini astrology, or the Jaimini Scholar certification course, that's what we are talking about. This is starting from the basics. So if you don't have some initial knowledge about Vedic astrology, we will be starting from that standpoint. And of course, there are people who have already mastered a lot of things. They come to the course saying, I want to learn more details about Jaimini, and they'll be able to get something out of it too, because every lesson has something for, beginners as well as people who have a lot of knowledge. So that's the way it's been structured. So that's to answer that question. But yes, going back to the Karakas, Joni, that's one of the main cruxes, or the kind of the backbone of Jaimini astrology. Even in the sutras, the Maharshi talks about each of the Karakas in each of the sutras, Atmadikaha, Kaladibirna, Bhogasat. So you have all of the sutras that come in the Upadesha sutras, which talk about these Karakas. And when we learn these lessons, we are going to take the sutras, translate it, and then start from there, because that is the best way to learn it, because you're learning it from the source. Now, I have to tell you though, there has been a lot of controversy around how the sutras are translated. Some people use just Sanskrit, some use a combination of Sanskrit and Katapayadi, like I do. And some say that even that doesn't work. It has to be translated in a different way. Now, the person who wrote it is no longer around, so we never know how to do it the right way. But we have to kind of apply what we know and see what the sutra is telling us, take that, and that's going to be what we'll be using in our lessons. And that's the kind of basics I'm talking about. We'll be starting from that standpoint. Now, when we talk about the Karakas, like I said, they are not sthira Karakas, like in Parashara system. As many of you know, Venus is the Karaka for relationships. You have Jupiter Karaka for children, and so on in the Parashara system. But in the Jaimini system, they are called Chara Karakas, which means that the Karakas can be different in each of the charts. And that's what Joni was referring to when she was saying Atma Karaka, Amatya Karaka, and so on. Each of these Karakas are signifying a certain portion of your life, and it is specific to you. You know why? Because the Karakas are judged by the degrees in your chart, the planetary degrees. So the highest one becomes Atma Karaka, the second highest Amatya Karaka, and so on. So when you take that specific Karaka that's for your chart and you assess your chart based on that, it becomes about you, right? It's specific to you. It's not a fixed Karaka. And these Karakas play a very, very important role all through Jaimini astrology. They come into the yogas. All the Raja yogas have the Karakas playing important roles in them. You have to look at them for transits. You even use them for the padas, which we'll talk about. There's a whole lesson that's dedicated to padas. So, and that's like a very important fundamental in Jaimini astrology, and we'll be talking about that too. So, Joni, did you want me to start looking at the questions or?
Yeah, I was looking at some of them, they're good, but another thing I want you to mention is that you're going to be doing a live webinar every week along with the recorded videos and the tests. And you are going to be working with everyone individually. Tell them a little bit about that.
About the course, yes, that's a very good idea. So the course itself is built based on Joni's University of Vedic Astrology course structure. We use the same learning platform because it seems to work for everybody. We've seen everybody having a easy way of working with the learning platform. It's called Schoology. Now, the way the course is structured is we will have certain lessons, and the lessons are going to be, the first one is Introduction to Jaimini System of Astrology. The second lesson will be Signs and Aspects in Jaimini System. Then we'll talk about the Katapayadi System and how to use that to decode the Upadesha Sutras. Then we'll talk about Argalas, which is a whole lesson on that. The Jaimini Karakas is another lesson. Then the Dasha system in Jaimini, the Lagnas, the special Lagnas, the Padas, and the Jaimini Raja Yogas. And in the yoga chapter, it's pretty big. So I have, I've kind of had to split it into two. So we have Jaimini Raja Yogas, Ashubha Yogas, Arishta Yogas, and some other Shubha Yogas, like Joni, you're aware of the Moon-Venus conjunction yoga. That's an important one in Jaimini. It's one of the most prominent Shubha Yogas. So we'll talk about all that in the Jaimini Yogas chapter. And then, of course, the last lesson, like I said, will be how do you see spirituality in a chart using Jaimini system. You have all these lessons, and the way it is structured is each lesson will have a lesson video, which I've already pre-recorded, and you'll have access to that. You can watch the video to understand what I'm talking about. The course material itself is my book. It's the Fundamentals of Jaimini System of Astrology. It's on Amazon, and I'll give you information on how to buy it. And once you have the course material and the video, you have a high level, kind of understanding as to what each lesson is talking about. In addition to that, every week I will be doing a live webinar on each of the lessons where we'll go over the lesson content, and you can ask questions based on, what, when you looked at the lesson, what all the questions or the doubts that you have, we'll go over that. And it'll be a live webinar. And the way it'll happen is it'll be fun, casual, informal. We want you to be able to have a good environment to study in, because taking my example, I study much better when I'm in a fun and casual environment. And, I don't study well in a disciplinarian or a strict environment. So that's very important to me, that it's very casual, very informal. You can take all the time you need to understand the content, and I will be there personally working with each of you who, when you sign up for the course. I'll be the tutor for each of you, and I'll be there to personally help you through each of the courses, make sure that you understand the concepts. And then at the end of each lesson, you will have a test. And the test will be based on the content of that lesson. You will take the test, and of course, I'm going to be grading it. I'll be working very closely with you during the entire semester. And once you're done with the whole thing, we'll have live webinars every week for 8 weeks. So that's 2 months. And at the end of that, when you're ready, if you want to go back and revise, you can definitely do that, because this is going to be lifetime membership. Once you have access to this course material, you have access to it forever. So even in future, when this course is opened up to new students, you can always come back and listen to the webinars or join us, just to refresh your concepts. So it's lifetime membership. And at the end of your course, when you are ready, we'll do the final exam where you will read an entire chart using Jaimini system concepts. And that's kind of, we'll work together to do that. We'll make sure that, you get all the concepts. And once you're done with that, you pass the course, you've completed the entire semester, you will get a certification, which will be a Jaimini Scholar certification. And this will be our fundamentals course. And then in future, I plan to come up with an advanced course with advanced Jaimini concepts. But for that, you need to have the fundamentals correct. So once you have this, we'll go to the advanced course. So that's kind of a high level structure of how the course is built.
Okay. I think I figured out why I had an echo. Do I still have echo?
Yeah, a little bit, Joni, just a little bit.
Darn, I thought I clicked on something that I fixed it. I was all excited. Anyway, but so I think we have some pretty good questions over here. Do you want to start taking some of the questions?
Sure. So let's look at some of the questions. I'm going to start from the bottom. So what if I fail the test? And that's the beauty of this course. And in fact, what I'm going to say now applies to the whole university that we have, the University of Vedic Astrology. There is no concept of failing a test. The whole idea is to keep improving, right? So if I'm never going to, and that's one of the things that I want to get away from, where we say, a certain number of points out of 100, or you failed or you passed. I want to get away from that mindset, because that's another thing that stops me from learning, right? And I'm basing this off of my experience. I want this to be about improving. So you're never going to fail a test, but I will tell you that, hey, these are some areas I want you to look at. These are the corrections. Then you come back and, we'll work on it together again until you get to the point where you're able to do it on your own. And that's what I call, getting through the course. You're not going to have a certain number of marks or, a percentage or any of that. We don't want that to come into the picture, because that brings an ego. We want it to be, like I said, a fun, casual environment where you learn something at the basics, at the foundation. And my intent is, at the end of this, for my students to be really good with the fundamentals and have that strong foundation on which they can build on. So there is no concept of failing the course, okay? So that's the first thing that I wanted to talk about. Let's look at the next question. Okay, so I see somebody saying this sounds complicated. That's because I'm trying to talk about a lot of concepts in the same video. But when you get into the course, these are all broken down into lessons. And each lesson will be going into the details. And like I said, you already know astrology, it's going to help you, but you don't need to know it, because this is from the basics. So you'll see that it's easy to understand. It's easy to comprehend these concepts. Okay. All right. So some of the other questions are the course materials included in the fee listed on the UVA site? So the fee that's on the UVA site will have, it includes your videos, which is for each of the semesters, the tests and the live webinars. All of that is included in the course fee. You're right. There's no additional cost for that. The book itself is the course material that I wrote last year. That book is on Amazon. That will have to be purchased. That's not available in the fee that we have there. Okay. All right. Let's see. Joni, do you see any other questions here? I'm looking.
Those were the main ones. Yes, that's that you just named off. And let's see.
I see. What is the Atma Karaka? Ali's asking that question. So just to give you a quick high-level review of the Atma Karaka, like I was saying, these are Chara Karakas. In the Jaimini system, we have specific Karakas for each person's chart. So for example, if we take your chart, we take the planet with the highest number of degrees, not including the nodes. So I use a Karaka system where we are not including Rahu and Ketu. And not including the nodes, you take the planet with the highest degrees. And that would end up being your Atma Karaka. And this is not including the outer planets as well. We don't use that for Karakas. So when you talk about the Atma Karaka, it is the soul's purpose. Atma in Sanskrit means soul, and Karaka, of course, is the purpose. So when you talk about Atma Karaka, it's what are you here on this planet to achieve, right? What are you going to do in this lifetime? That particular planet embodies the purpose of this soul in this body during this lifetime. It's the simplest way I can put it in. And that's the reason why the Atma Karaka is one of the most critical planets that we use in Jaimini astrology, even in assessing the Raja Yogas, a lot of the transits to the Atma Karakas can cause a lot of important events in your life and so on. But that's the simplest way I can put it. But when we get into the lessons, you will see we'll talk about the Jaimini Sutra that talks about the Atma Karaka, how we decode it, and then we start with the concepts of what the Atma Karaka stands for. And of course, the celebrity charts we look at to see how did the Atma Karaka play a role in this person's life and bring them into whatever they're doing now, which is the purpose of their life. So we'll be going into that a lot in detail. But I hope I answered your question about what is the Atma Karaka. All right, and see another question here.
So tell Shree, tell how long the course is,
Yes.
and that every week you do a live webinar with it.
Yes. So the course, if you keep up with the live webinars every week, each webinar will be for each lesson that we have in the semester, but I'll have to do 2 webinars for the yogas lesson because that's a lot of information. I don't want to cram that in one. It's going to be a lot. So I want to take our time to understand the yogas because that's very critical. So we'll have 2 webinars for that. So in total, you'll have 8 live webinars starting July 23rd. That's when the first webinar will be held. That's actually the official start date of this course is July 23rd. And starting that day, every week, every Thursday, because Thursday is the, the guru, right? The day of learning. So that's the reason why I chose Thursday. So every Thursday, starting next Thursday, starting July 23rd for 8 weeks. So that's 2 months. You will have a live webinar. If you keep up with it, you will finish the course in 2 months. Now, if you want to take a self-paced approach and you want to kind of take your time, that's absolutely fine because everybody learns at a different rate. So the webinars will be recorded and you will have lifetime access to all the recordings, all the lessons, etc., that are on the website. And you can just catch up with it whenever you're ready. So say you did the first lesson this week and you want to take some more time to revise it and you're not ready for the second lesson, then you just kind of, you can join the webinar if you want. If you don't want, you can just listen to the recording. But whenever you're ready, you can go back, access the recording and listen to it. Or you can come back when we start the course again and join all over again. That's the beauty of this course and even the University of Vedic Astrology. You can take it at any pace you want and kind of go with your own learning system and say, I want to do this at this time. But if you keep up with it, it's 2 months. That's the way it's been designed. Okay. Was that what you wanted me to touch on, Joni?
There was another question. How is this different from other astrologies?
Yes. So again, one of the things that I want to really touch on, and we were talking about this earlier, is when you talk about the Parashara system, it's based on the concepts in BPHS or Brihat Parashara Hora Shastra, which was, of course, it was devised by sage Parashara. Now, the Jaimini system is based on the Upadesha Sutras, which were written by sage Jaimini, right? Now, it's not different. I would say the main difference in the Jaimini system versus the Parashara system comes in when you talk about aspects or Karakas or Dasha and even yogas. So you have to think of it as the structure, the basic is the same, right? It's the same chart format that we look at. It's the same signs, of course, that's not going to change. That's the sky, right? So that's the same. But when you get into it and you look at the aspects, they are different. It's not going to be the same aspects you see in the Parashara system. For example, Jupiter having, the 5 and 9 aspect, or Saturn having the 3 and 10 aspect. In the Jaimini system, it's a little different because the aspects are sign-based. So we will be talking about that in the lesson on aspects. But just to tell you at a high level, the differences, it's, the aspects, the dashas and the yogas mostly are different. But what I like about the Jaimini system is it's not at odds with another system. What it brings to you is an additional layer that you can apply to to your current system of prediction. So you take your current system of prediction, you add some of these concepts, and it gives you a deeper kind of layer, an additional layer on top of that. And it makes more accurate predictions. And the reason I say that is if you look at the Chara Dasha system, the time frames are much smaller compared to the Vamshotri Dasha system. The Vamshotri Dasha system, you have long time frames for the planetary dashas, right? The Chara Dashas, the time frames are much shorter. So you can make a more distinct and, kind of a condensed kind of prediction using the Jaimini system. And you use the Parashara system to understand the underlying kind of prediction, and then you use the Jaimini system to make a more exact kind of prediction. So that's the high level difference that I can think of. Okay. Now, let me see what other questions are here. Yes, and somebody said it's a subset of Vedic astrology. It is. Okay, and will I earn a certificate? Yes, you will have an actual certificate sent to you at the end of this course, and it will be a Jaimini Scholar certification. Okay. Do you see any other questions? Do you guys have any other questions about the course or anything that you want me to talk about? Okay, let me see.
Mention, I'll let you talk since I keep getting echoed, about first semester just started, but it's not too late, because explain how university works in terms of semesters and timing.
Yes. And like we were talking about the timing, this is not going to be like, you have to finish one lesson in a week and come back and do the next lesson. And, we want to get away from that. Like I said, we want you to have your time to get through each of the lessons. But say, you missed the first lesson, or like in the case of University of Vedic Astrology, we started our first semester on July 15th, last week. But that doesn't mean that it's too late, because the way the courses are structured is that you can join at any time and kind of join in with the webinars, but you can go back and listen to the recorded webinars and catch up. So you're never too late to join it in a way. But yes, of course, when you join the first time, you kind of get in with that group. But you can join even later and catch up with something, because it's been recorded. And you have full access to it at any time. We never remove our recordings from the website. It's always in the archived folder or the, the old recordings folder. So that's one of the main benefits of this university, because we kind of work with various learning rates and help you to kind of achieve what you want, because we want to make sure that you're comfortable with what you've learned and you've got it. It's important to get it. It's not just about the certificate. It's important to understand the concept. And it's very important to all of us, all the tutors at the University of Vedic Astrology, that you understand the concept at the basic. And we never say, hey, you failed a test, or, you got 40% or 30%. There's no number system here. We always say that there is a correction that you need to make. And here's what, let's talk about this. Let's see if you can understand this better. And that's very important to us. And even for this Jaimini system, like I was saying, when I was learning, it was very difficult for me to find the content, because, it's not much available in terms of online content or, books. Or so what I had to do is kind of get down to the basics and say, okay, what does the sutra say? What is it trying to convey, right? And that's what I base my book off of. And that's what this course is based on. So we encourage all our students, even when you join the Jaimini course, of course, you should bring your thoughts to the table and say, hey, I think this works this way, and we'll talk about it. Because we don't want anybody to feel like they can't speak up or bring their thoughts to the table. You should be able to discuss it, because that's how we learn. Right? We discuss, we kind of understand what each other is thinking, and we learn from each other. And we're always, wanting to learn and improve. I'm never going to call myself a graduate, because I think my entire life is about taking, this course of life, right? You don't graduate. You're always learning. So that's very important. So I want you to understand that, you will be empowered to learn, empowered to build on these concepts for yourself, to bring up your own concepts. And, of course, in future, we'll work together after the semester as well. We'll be working together in the university. So that's something that I really wanted to bring to you.
Yeah. And we also have a WhatsApp now. Tell that.
The app.
Yes.
So Schoology, the learning system that we're talking about, it has an app that you can access on your phone. So you know how today we are all about, quick, everything has to be the speed of thought, right? We don't want to log in and try to, punch in your login ID and password, and you want to do it quickly. And for that, you have the app. The app will allow you to watch the videos, to take the tests, and say you're traveling. Say you're somewhere outside and you're waiting for an hour or 2 hours and you want to do a lesson or listen to a lesson video, you have it right there on your app on the phone. So that makes it very easy to access. And that's another good thing about this university. And of course, always we come down to this like-minded people. So if you've ever wanted to learn astrology, Vedic astrology, right? I mean, you have the University of Vedic Astrology with that. And if you want to learn Jaimini system, you're going to come into a group of people who are all trying to attain the same thing. So they're all thinking at the same wavelength as you. And that's hard to find in today's world. If you go into your workplace or a work setting and you talk about this, people will, kind of, at least with me, they give me weird looks, but but when you're here, you're with family. You're talking to us. We are all at the same wavelength. We understand each other. And that's one of the main benefits of joining a course like this.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So if there's not any other questions, I think we're good. I think people have the opportunity to understand your course, when it starts, and what it's all about. So July 23rd, Thursday, is when it starts. We will leave links down below where you can click on, go right to the registration page. And we look forward to seeing you every there. This is so exciting. Once again, I can't tell you, Shree, how proud I am of you and excited about this launch your semesters and all the learning that everyone does, and how much fun. We have so much fun learning. That's what I love about this university, and the friendships and connections that we've made.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, what excites me, Joni, is the opportunity that you've given me where I can teach all this to more people, right? We are extending the amount of knowledge to more folks who want to understand it, want to learn it, and then they'll go on and teach other people. So this is what excites me, because we are taking this out into the world and saying, here's what I want to teach you. And without this university, I don't think this opportunity would have been there, at least for me. But and I'm always thankful to you for giving me the opportunity. And I hope people see the benefit of the course, because I did. Today, when I do consultations or readings, I extensively use the Karakas, the Argalas, and the Padas for sure. And then the other ones when I need to, like if somebody comes and says, when am I going to have a child, or when will I get married? That's when, you kind of drill down, look at the Chara Dashas and see if those are getting activated, the Padas. But it's, before I knew Jaimini system, I didn't have all of these tools at my disposal, and now I do. So that's one of the things I want to really be able to take across to our students and teach them, the ability to use this to make predictions, because it's all about practical use, right? You can have as much theory as you want, but if you can't use it practically, then it's not of much use. But we want to make sure that your theory is firm, your foundation is good, and then you bring in the practical use of these concepts. And that's what excites me when we talk about this course. And again, once again, I'm grateful and thankful that you gave me the opportunity to do this on your platform, Joni.
Thank you. And you'll see what it feels like when your students graduate, the pride that you will have in those individuals, because you know you gave them that knowledge, and it empowers you to empower other people. So
I can't wait. That's very exciting to know that. And I'm looking forward to the first webinar on the 23rd. Next week is when we are starting our first webinar. I'm looking forward to that because it's going to be fun. And I was telling Joni, you know, for me, this is not work. I look forward to these webinars because I get to meet you guys and talk about something that I'm passionate about and something that's really fun to me, and bring that information to you. So I'm excited. I can't wait to see you there. And of course, if you have any more questions, don't forget to reach out to us. I'll put my information, my contact information below this video. I'll give it to Joni so she can put it there. And just reach out to us by email. You know, my email will be there. I am ready to answer any questions that you have. And I look forward to seeing you there next Thursday at the webinar.
thank you, Shree. You're amazing.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Joni.